in the heart of the city square, where the weekend buzz wrapped everyone in a warm, lively hug. Street vendors shouted about hot snacks and fresh fruits, while kids chased balloons and parents snapped photos under the golden autumn sun. A shiny grand piano sat like a star waiting for its moment, its black lid open wide, as if begging someone to sit and make magic. Alexander Hargrove, only 28, but already drowning in his family's tech billions, leaned against a fancy cafe table in clothes that cost more than most people earn in a year, laughing with friends who hung on his every word. His eyes, sharp and bored, landed on Marcus, the quiet black man who claimed the same weathered bench every day. Backpack patched with duct tape, coat thin against the breeze. Alexander's grin turned cruel. He loved games that made him feel taller. "Hey, old man," he called, voice slicing through the chatter. "Bet you a car if you can play." He jerked a thumb toward his sleek silver sedan, gleaming across the street, keys dangling from his fingers like a dare. "That beauty right there. Play something decent, and she's yours." His friends howled, slapping the table, certain the homeless man would stumble or refuse. A ripple of giggles spread, phones lifted, ready to catch the crash. Marcus didn't flinch at first. His dark eyes, lined with years of hard nights, simply studied the piano the way a sailor studies the sea before a storm. The square's noise dimmed as people sensed something coming. Marcus rose slowly, joints creaking, brushing crumbs and dust from his coat with hands that trembled just enough to notice. He hadn't felt ivory keys in over a decade, not since concert halls and spotlights, not since everything fell apart. Yet the challenge poked a sleeping ember inside his chest, and the ember answered with heat. Step by step, he crossed the cobblestones, each footfall heavier, the crowd forming a loose circle, whispers buzzing like bees. Alexander folded his arms, smirk locked in place, certain the joke would land any second. Marcus reached the bench, the piano's shadow cool across his face. He flexed his fingers once, twice, knuckles popping softly. A child near the front clutched her mother's hand tighter. Someone's phone timer started ticking. Marcus lowered himself onto the stool, the wood groaning under sudden memory. For a heartbeat the square held its breath, leaves frozen mid-whirl, steam pausing above coffee cups. His hands hovered, calloused tips grazing the air above middle C, and in that tiny silence every onlooker felt the same electric question. Would he play, or would he walk away and let the rich kid win? Marcus settled onto the piano bench like a man sliding into a memory, the wood cool beneath him. And for one endless second, his rough hands just floated above the keys, scarred knuckles, catching the sunlight, while the whole square leaned forward, as if pulled by an invisible string. A little girl dropped her ice cream. It splattered unnoticed. Alexander's laugh died in his throat, replaced by a tight swallow. Marcus shut his eyes, and the years peeled a Waitini apartment. Single mother counting coins for lessons, her tired smile when he hit the right chord, the smell of her cheap perfume mixing with rosin. The crowd hushed so completely that a distant bus brake squeaked like thunder. Then Marcus breathed in, chest rising, and his right hand fell first. A single soft note, pure and round, hanging in the air like a question. Another note joined, gentle as rain, then a third, and suddenly the arpeggio rippled outward, silver threads weaving through the autumn breeze. People froze mid-step. A skateboarder forgot to push. A vendor's ladle hovered over soup. The music grew legs, sprinting into a bluesy sway that carried the ache of empty stomachs and colder nights. But it refused to stay, sat it, twisted upward, bright and defiant. Horns of hope that weren't even there yet, somehow everyone heard. Marcus's left hand dropped in with deep, rolling bass that thumped hearts, his right dancing higher, fingers blurring into cascades that painted pictures, cracked sidewalks blooming with flowers, lonely benches turning into front road seats. A boy once promised the world, now giving it back in sound. Alexander's friends nudged each other, mouths open, phones trembling in shaky grips. A teenager whispered, That's real," voice cracking. The melody spun stories without words, gigs, hospital beds. A mother's last proud clap then flipped into a rhythm so infectious that toes tapped inside sneakers. Shoulders swayed under business suits. An old man in a wheelchair lifted both hands to clap on the off-beat. Sweat beaded on Marcus's forehead, but his face glowed calm, almost smiling. Every note placed with surgeon care yet wild as river water. The piece climbed, tension coiling like a spring, threatening to snap, and the crowd swayed with it. Strangers gripping strangers' sleeves, breath held for the peak that might never come. Alexander's arms dropped to his sides, keys cutting into his palm. He looked suddenly small, expensive jacket wrinkling as he shifted. Marcus leaned into the final phrase, chords stacking thick and glorious, then released them into a single high trill that floated, fragile, before melting into silence. For 2 heartbeats, nothing moved. Then the square exploded, cheers, whistles, stomping feet. Coins raining into the upturned hat someone had magically placed on the piano lid. A woman wiped tears she didn't know she'd shed. Phones flashed like lightning. Marcus opened his eyes, gentle and unsurprised, while Alexander stood rooted. The bet now a boulder on his chest. The car across the street, glinting like a promise he never meant to keep. The square still rang with wild cheers when the first coin clinked into Marcus's faded cap. Then a second, a third, until silver and copper poured like warm rain, strangers shouting more. While children jumped to see over shoulders, and a street juggler forgot his pins mid-spin. Marcus lifted one hand in quiet thanks, the other still resting on the piano, as if saying goodbye to an old friend. And every flash from 100 phones froze the moment in light his calm eyes. The hat filling fast, Alexander's face burning redder than the autumn leaves swirling at their feet. The heir's fingers shook as they dug into his pocket. The car keys caught the sun like a tiny sword, and the crowd hushed again, sensing the next act in this sudden play. Alexander stepped forward, shoes scuffing, throat dry, and pushed the keys toward Marcus with a whisper. Only the front row caught. You actually did it." Cameras clicked faster, hungry for the handover, but Marcus did not grab or gloat. He simply closed the man's trembling hand over the metal for a gentle second, then took the prize with a nod so soft it felt like forgiveness. "Music saved me once," he told the circle of faces, voice low, yet carrying to the back. "Maybe this car will help save someone else," and the words landed heavier than any victory dance, making a businessman lower his phone and a teenager bite her lip. Phones kept rolling as Alexander backed away, friends pulling him toward the cafe. But the clip was already leaping across screens, #piano, homeless genius trending before the last coin settled. By dusk, the square emptied, yet the story chased. The sun. Notifications pinged in taxis, kitchens and boardrooms, strangers forwarding the video with shaky captions. Wait for it. That same evening, as streetlights blinked awake and the air cooled, a young reporter named Lena slipped through the diner door, notebook clutched like a passport, spotting Marcus at the counter, nursing hot coffee steam. She slid into the booth opposite, voice careful. "Sir, the internet wants your name." Marcus smiled, small, tired, but the piano's echo still lived in his fingertips. And when Lena waved Alexander's black credit card left behind in a flustered rush, he only chuckled and ordered pie for them both. Between bites and refills, the past spilled out like slow honey, tiny clubs and smoky basements, applause that once paid rent. A mother's proud letters tucked in his backpack until the night pills promised easier sleep than grief, until hospital. Halls and empty wallets and park benches replaced spotlights. Lena's pen flew, but her eyes asked the real question. Hanging in the diner's warm light, would one perfect song truly pull a man all the way back from the edge? Or was the car just the first step on a road no one could see yet? Outside, The silver sedan sat under a street lamp, engine cooling, waiting to learn its new purpose. While inside, two strangers leaned closer over pie plates, the night holding its breath for whatever dawn might bring. The video stormed boardrooms and breakfast tables alike, racking up millions of views by the time Alexander's private helicopter touched down on the family estate's lawn. His father's text, a single line of fire: "Home, now." The mogul waited, in the glass-walled study, city skyline behind him, like a throne. Arms crossed so tight the watch cost more than a house gleamed under strain. "You wagered our name on a whim," he roared, voice bouncing off marble, but Alexander, still smelling diner coffee and pie, could only hand over his phone. The old man snatched it, thumb hovering, then pressed play. Marcus's first note filled the room, soft as dawn, and the mogul's scowl cracked. His eyes, usually steel, softened at the climbing blues, the impossible grace in every turn. He watched to the end twice, silent, then set the phone down like it might break. "That man," he said, almost to himself, "plays like the world forgot him, but he never forgot it." Outside, Marcus eased the silver sedan, still strange, in his hands through rainy streets to the shelter that once kept him alive with thin soup and thinner hope. He parked, popped the trunk, and hauled out dusty cases. A trumpet with a bent bell, violins missing strings, a keyboard yellowed by time, all rescued from a shuttered community center before the wrecking ball came. Kids gathered on the cracked basketball court, eyes wide as he tuned what he could, his voice gentle. "Music doesn't care where you sleep." First lesson was chaos squeaks laughter. Wrong notes, but by dusk, a shy girl coaxed a clean scale from the trumpet, and the whole courtyard cheered like it was Carnegie Hall. Days blurred. Marcus shuttled instruments and children, gas gauge dropping, heart lifting. Then one gray afternoon, the sedan's door opened, and Alexander stepped out. Coat too fine for the shelter's peeling paint, face pale with nerves. Rain dotted his shoulders as he crossed the court, kids pausing mid-chord. "I was wrong," he said, words cracking like ice on a puddle. "Teach me." Marcus studied him, no anger, only the same tired kindness, then handed over a spare beginner book. Lessons began in the shelter's dim basement, Alexander's manicured fingers stumbling over Twinkle. Twinkle, Marcus patient beside him on a milk crate. Wrong notes turned to right ones, then to coffee runs that stretched into midnight talks. Marcus speaking of park bench winters and a mother's last proud letter. Alexander admitting boardrooms felt colder than any street, that billions bought silence louder than any scream. Laughter crept in, then trust. Alexander brought better lights, real chairs, a donated upright piano that rolled in on a truck he paid for without telling his father. Kids called him Mr. Alex now, tugging his sleeve for help with rhythm. One night, thunder shaking the windows. Marcus asked the question hanging between them like smoke. "What happens when your dad finds out you're here, instead of corner offices?" Alexander looked at the circle of young faces bent over sheet music, and shrugged, a small smile breaking. Maybe he'll finally hear something worth more than stock prices. The rain kept falling, but inside the basement the music rose warmer. Suspense thick as honey. What would the mogul do if he walked through that door tomorrow, and whose life would change next? Spring unfurled into summer, then folded into crisp fall again. In the city square once, just a patch of stone and chatter. Now pulsed with banners and spotlights for the grand benefit concert. The same grand piano polished to a mirror under strings of fairy lights. Its keys whispering promises to every kid who had ever pressed one in the shelter basement. Crowds poured in hours early, blankets spread, picnic baskets open, phones banned from the front rows, so nothing could steal the magic. While backstage, Marcus tuned his fingers more than the strings, heart thumping louder than any drum, because tonight the world would hear, not just a song, but a beginning. Alexander moved through the shadows in a simple black hoodie. No logo, no watch, slipping envelopes of cash to sound, texts, and printers. His name nowhere on the posters, even though every light bulb and sandwich traced back to his quiet checks. Rumors swirled who was the mystery donor, and a local radio host teased clues on air, keeping the audience guessing as the sun dipped and the first warm-up act, a trio of shelter teens, coaxed shaky but brave violin notes that earned polite claps growing into real ones. Marcus stepped out last, coat traded for a neat vest, and the roar hit him like wind. He lifted a hand, smiled small, then sat and let silence settle before the opening chord, a deep, rolling wave that pulled every soul forward on their seats. He played the blues first, slow and aching, painting rainy nights and empty pockets, then flipped it into swing so bright that grandparents danced with toddlers on their hips. Halfway through, he paused, sweat shining, and spoke into the mic. "This last piece is for the heir who bet big and lost even bigger in the best way." Gasps rippled, heads turned. Alexander felt his cue, like a tap on the shoulder. He walked on stage, two stunned murmurs, hoodie sleeves pushed up, and slid onto the bench beside Marcus, heart racing faster than the metronome in his head. Their shoulders touched. Marcus counted soft 1, 2, and Alexander's hands, once clumsy, now found the simple harmony he had practiced until fingers bled in the shelter's dim light. The duet started tentative, his part a gentle river under Marcus's soaring sky. But with every measure, confidence grew, notes locking like puzzle pieces, the crowd swaying as one. A wrong chord slipped in. Alexander winced, but Marcus smiled, covered it with a playful riff, and the audience laughed with them, tension melting into joy. The final crescendo built like thunder, both men leaning into the keys, sweat flying, until the last chord crashed and held, vibrating through chests and tears and open mouths. Confetti cannons burst, gold and silver raining slow motion, while cheers shook the square's old stones. In that storm of sound, Marcus pulled Alexander into a hug, two silhouettes against the lights, and the mogul watching from the VIP row, incognito, finally stood to clap, eyes wet. Proceeds flashed on a giant screen, enough for a full music outreach center. Marcus hired as director. The silver car now swirling with painted treble clefs, parked out front, ready to ferry kids and guitars anywhere hope needed wheels. As the crowd chanted for one more song, Alexander caught Marcus's eye and mouthed, "Thank you." Marcus answered with a nod that said, "We're just getting started," leaving everyone on stage, in the seats, streaming at home, leaning forward into the night, hungry for whatever impossible note might ring out next.